Welcome to the Generic Anime Group presents the Generic Anime Podcast. I'm here with four of our lovely podcasters. Please introduce yourselves, gentlemen.
I'll go first. I'm
my
the
name
older
is-
brother.
Wow,
I'm the
you cut
older
them off
brother
right there.
of Generic Anime Group. So to Sam, I'm Joey.
Hello, my name is Edwin Thomas. I am the freshest member, seeing the least anime, but still excited to be here.
Hi guys, I'm T-Leif. I have probably been watching anime for longer than all of these people combined, so yeah, that's fun.
Hey guys, I'm Noah. I've been watching anime for about 12 years, so...
And I'm Sam, and I can say with confidence, I actually watched The Endless Eight of Haruhi Suzumiya.
I did too. Oh my god.
Why? Such a
Because I
meme.
hate
Why would
myself.
you do that?
Because I hate myself.
Why would you put yourself through that? That's such a meme. Oh my god.
Well, now I can
If
say
you ever-
that I did it.
If you ever get a chance, watch the AMV Trollolol. It sums up everything with the Russian Trollolol guy in 5 minutes.
You're not wrong.
All right, so our big topic for this podcast is we're going to be talking about isekais, isekai anime, isekai light novels. Really doesn't matter, just kind of reverse isekai, whatever. That's the topic for the day. Before we begin, T-Leif, would you like to explain to our viewers what an isekai is?
Yeah, so for those of you who are new to the world of anime or who need a refresher, Isekai is a Japanese phrase which literally translated it means other or different world. It's a genre of anime, manga, light novels, etc. that revolves around the idea of a person from our world, Earth, being traveled to, being summoned to, being transported to, dying and then reincarnating inside of some parallel universe or a fantasy sci-fi world. There's a lot of way that this is done in examples I will get into a little bit later, but that's basically the general idea. The reverse isekai, on the other hand, is when somebody from a different world somehow ends up in ours through whatever means. So those are kind of two related genres that we're talking about today.
Yeah, like this is just me, a good one. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen this. Like Recreators? I think it was. That's like
I've heard about
example
that.
of a reverse isekai.
Another good reverse isekai is The Devil is a Part-Timer. That's probably
that's a good
more
one.
known
Oh yeah.
series.
That's probably the most prominent reverse isekai out on the market today. But it is a genre. It's just more niche, and it falls under the whole isekai genre of.
Yeah. So the first thing, though, since Isekai came out, I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard, but this is the big one in Isekai news. Sword Art Online Progressive is getting an anime, or as I like to call it, the good Sword Art Online. Because
God.
I'm sorry. This is where I'm going to go at it. We were talking about this briefly before we started recording. SAO peaked after the Aincrad arc. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. Pro tip, if you're planning on getting into Sword Art Online, don't even bother watching the first 2 seasons. Just watch the SAO Abridged series on YouTube, because this is the only anime where the Abridged series is actually better than the original.
Whoa. I love the Aincrad arc. Don't get me wrong. I know some of this stuff is bad, but you got to admit, some of the technical aspects, like the music in Sword Art Online, is absolutely stellar, especially paired with the action sequences.
Yeah, but without plot and any meaningful character development, there's really no point to watching it because it's just a pile of nothing.
Wait,
About to say, if it's just the music, couldn't you just listen to it somewhere else?
If you're literally watching the show just for the purposes of music, you can download and find the playlist online somewhere for like probably
No.
YouTube.
Okay. Let me represent this. Coming from a perspective of like really being a video major and going through the stuff, pairing music with good action sequences and dialogue is really good. You can't deny the fact that the one scene where Kirito has going after the one, I can't remember the monster's name, but it's the goat monster, and Swordland is playing in the background, and he's saying, gotta go faster, gotta go faster. You can't deny that that's a really good action scene right
Yeah,
there.
he was acting like Sonic because he had to go fast. Speaking of acting, just to get the other thing, Edwin, Noah, my brother is clearly a fan of SAO. T-Leif is not SAO. Edwin, Noah, you care to split the divide a little?
Actually,
It's hard for me because I only seen pieces of it, and I did not like what I was seeing, I guess.
I
stopped the series.
I don't hate SAO. I dislike the way that they did the anime, because if you actually read the light novels, it's a lot better because they have a lot better pacing. There's a lot more character development. There's a lot more thought that goes into progressing the storyline. Whereas the anime, because they had to fit it into 12 or 24 or however many episodes, had a lot of pacing issues in the first 2 seasons.
I will at least agree with you on that.
I had a huge problem with that because that caused them to cut out a huge amount of the actual relevant plot details and character development that these characters are working through from being trapped in this video game situation.
I will agree with you that they did cut stuff
Noah,
down.
wait, real quick, Joe. I know, Noah, you actually read the light novels for SAO. Please, give us your thoughts on the anime.
One of my favorite chapters was actually the extra chapter, but you know. I did.
Of course it is.
I really did enjoy the light novel, and I do find some guilty pleasure in watching the anime.
There we go. I got someone on my side. There we go.
Okay, so we have a nice even split of Edwin and T-Leif are kind of like no on SAO. Joe and Noah are like yes on SAO. Me personally, no.
But you did agree that the Aincrad arc was okay.
Yeah, I can agree that the Aincrad arc was okay, but then this was the thing. Kirito is the quintessential of a Mary Sue. Like, what's wrong? Like, there's literally, after the first season, it's like, nothing's really wrong with the man.
A problem with the Aincrad.
He kind of became unlikable to the point where they had to make the second arc villain such a scumbag, such a weird tongue-licking face dude, that you had to hate him by default. Not because the main character was likable, but because the main villain was such a dirtbag.
But still, I do want to bring up a point. Even though it was a dirtbag, it was voiced in the dub by Todd Havercord, so you can't 100% hate him.
Could not save that.
You can't 100% hate him. You can 99.9% hate him, but you can't 100%.
Oh, I can.
Todd Havercord is an
if Kirito was so unlikable, why did literally everybody at the cosplay conventions dress up as him for that 1 year that
Online first came out? Literally the only memorable character that people can dress up as.
Maybe because
there's so many other animes out there, though.
Like, to put it in perspective,
because they like him.
There were put this in perspective. There were 2 seasons of SAO Alicization arc being released over the last season, which would have been spring, summer because of the whole COVID thing, and into fall-ish because they just wrapped up the end of it. That entire series was mostly enjoyable because Kirito was a fucking vegetable for half of it.
Okay, well, the first part of Alicization was actually good. I will admit, Alicization has hit its stride in some places and it's whiffed in other places. SAO is kind of like one of those. It's good in some places and it's not good in other. It's a very inconsistent series.
Okay, well, let's actually make a fair point though. What makes this is just me then? What do you think kind of makes a good isekai then? We have 4 differentiated opinions for this potential here. What makes a good isekai? Because it seems like we're split with this one. What do you guys think kind of makes an isekai good then?
So I have 2 main criteria. The first criteria is that it has to do isekai in a either unexpected or a new way that we haven't seen before. For instance, everyone has kind of like seen the whole this X character dies and gets reincarnated into a new world. But how can we play with that and make it interesting? In terms of Konosuba, they have him die in like the most ridiculous way possible from shame because he got run over by a freaking tractor or whatever it was, and he ends up in this new world because he was a freaking idiot. That's interesting. That's new. That's creative. That's not just same old, oh, X character dies and ends up in a new world. Saga of Tanya the Evil has a very, very similar thing where she dies and gets reincarnated in this new world, but it's in an unexpected way where she's literally trying to say fuck you to God as like hard as she can in this new world.
Technically.
Well, yeah.
Read the light novels. They get more into that.
It's she.
Right. My second criteria is the Isekai world that they get transferred into has to be consistent in and of itself. It can't just be a mishmash of random concepts and ideas. It has to have actual decent world building and laws and rules and whatever those may be in terms of magic or high-tech science or mechs or whatever, but the world has to be consistent in and of itself. It can't have, X character be super weak at one moment and then the next moment, because of power of friendship, become like the most OP thing ever, and then all of a sudden back to level 1. Like, it has to be consistent and have scaling power levels equivalent to what is being presented at the time.
Okay.
I'd like to build on what T-Leif says here. One of the things that I noticed with some of the better Isekai series is the main character is more mature. They're better than your average high school or teenager. To throw a couple examples out there, that time I got reincarnated as a slime. The main character technically in that is a 37-year-old salaryman when he dies. Rising of the Shield Hero, Sam, you'll be better able to tell this, but the guy is in his low 20s attending college, if I remember correctly.
He's in his early 20s. He's early 20s university student.
Yeah, Saga of Tanya the Evil, it's another salaryman there. The one series that I'm reading, light novel-wise, Realist Hero, Saving a Kingdom, he's in his early 20s too, and a college student. ReZero, how old is he, Sam?
He's a high schooler.
He's a high school, but he's late high school.
Junior, senior year of high school, something like that, or the equivalent of, because Japan uses a very different system.
Right. So what Konosuba is kind of like an exception to me on that, but I've been finding some of the really good isekais out there have the more mature characters, which allows them to think outside the box when they're placed in these situations, and when they think outside the box and they throw something out there and the characters in this world go, wait, what? That's actually a thing? It's like, oh yeah. No Game, No Life. The brother character is college age as well.
No? He's high school.
He's high school. He's late high school.
Yes.
I want to say.
Oh, Edwin's going.
I'm about to say, so what I'm gathering from this, there's a lot of older salarymen in Japan that just want to die and go somewhere else. Is that what I'm getting at?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. That's not one
necessarily incorrect.
That's not wrong, but that's only one category of isekai. I would say the larger portion of isekai are what are considered NEETs, NEETs, which stands for not in education, employment, or training characters, where the character is literally just considered a gamer or a useless layabout with no actual useful skills for society, that end up meeting Truck-kun and die, and then get reincarnated in this other world where they discover fantastic magic powers because they're an OP main character.
I do like
that
the
makes
fact,
sense. It's
yeah,
it sounds
it's
like
one
the
of those
ultimate escapist fantasy.
There's also a lot of trapped in a video game main characters, so like Hero from Log Horizon, engineering student.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about Log Horizon at all. That's actually the other different kinds of isekai. A lot of times it's normally like one character, but there have also been, in my opinion, sort of the better ones have been when multiple people have gotten sent to different worlds as well. Like you said, Log Horizon, I enjoyed that one. Overlord, if you think about it, technically the main character might have been isekai, but his whole cast of his crew
An ensemble
comes
cast.
from a different world itself. The main character is human, but everyone else came from a different world as well.
Right, so those type of animes or those type of isekais fall under the category that involves like video games.
Mhm.
So this would be SAO, this would be Overlord, this would be Log Horizon, this would be Infinite Dendrogram, which was recent, I believe, 2 seasons ago, and it's really good if you haven't seen it yet.
I have never seen it. Don't kill me.
It's fucking amazing. This would be what's the other one I'm thinking of? One of the really old ones that people really liked is the Hack Sign, which is really good, involving video games and a lot of people being transported into a video game world. To a degree, some of this was reflected in like other animes that don't necessarily have like an isekai component to them. They might take things from video games or other role-playing games and mix them in. For instance, different kinds of parties or classes are pretty popular.
Cell World does that.
Based on like fantasy-based anime. So there's that part to consider as well.
I will say
a lot of these isekais in the parts kind of seem very gamey, like video gamey, very D&D like.
Well, if you think about it, the typical isekai plot is kind of taking place in a typical fantasy RPG world where you have adventure type guilds and all that other stuff, which is why it's interesting when something like a reverse isekai, like The Devil is a Part-Timer, where it's those characters coming into our world and interacting with us that way. That what's, as T-Leif says, that kind of sets it apart. Or with Tanya's Saga the Evil, that's an alternate World War I history timeline where, yes, they do have the effect of magic in there, but it's a practicality. It's not off the scale kind of thing. It's practical magic integrated into the technology as well.
Speaking of the sort of different ones, this is something I've noticed as a trend just among light novels. A lot of recent ones have taken the thing of kind of, I don't want to say copying, but copying sort of what Reincarnated as a Slime did. They might have come out at the same time, but it's sort of one of those character gets reincarnated as a monster creature instead. Like, I'm a spider, so what? Skeleton Knight in Another World. One that I think
Overlord,
is amusing that I
technically.
haven't read yet, but I probably will, is main character is like reincarnated as a sword or something. I haven't seen that yet. There's another one where they're reincarnated as like someone's pet dog.
Oh god, those ones sound like parody.
There's one where the guy gets reincarnated as a werewolf under the Demon Lord.
One of my personal favorite isekais that is completely ridiculous and literally just for the guilty pleasure is called Reborn as a Vending Machine. I Now Wander the Dungeon.
I'm sorry, you have to explain that a little bit.
Because okay, so basically, in this isekai, the unnamed protagonist is a Japanese machine otaku who gets crushed to death by a falling vending machine. He then finds himself reincarnated in a fantasy world dungeon as a sentient vending machine.
What?
You can see him here, but is immobile, and his speech is limited to stock Japanese vending machine phrases such as "welcome" or "too bad." As a vending machine, he discovers he can dispense any item he has purchased with money in his previous life and can convert such sales into life points to sustain his existence. And like he just goes on and explores this dungeon and provides like.
But you said he's immobile. How does he explore then?
To other like dungeon crawlers, like he eventually meets like one of the people who just like puts him on her back, and then they go exploring in the dungeon because this dungeon explorer wants convenient access to this vending machine. It's freaking hilarious, and I love it.
How many volumes is this?
It currently has 3 volumes out. I believe.
Oh my god! There's enough for 300-page books of this? Really?
Yep.
Oh my
Not necessarily like 300-page books. A lot of these are like 200 pages.
But
So yeah, that's a little
one
bit.
of the most ridiculous like animes or not animes, light novels I've ever like read, and it's beautiful. If you get a chance to check it out, I highly recommend it.
Okay, freaking Vinny.
So that'll make it stand out a bit.
Yeah, the only crazy one
That one definitely sounds parody.
Yeah, personally for me, the weirdest one that I at least ever heard of, there was two. The one where the dude, what was it? It was like he wanted to be reincarnated as like a pampered pooch or something. I think it was the title, like Pampered Pooch. So he could be reincarnated as someone's dog, but it was like reincarnated as like God Dog or something. It was like, you're pampered. You're a pampered pooch now. Yeah, but I'm a dog deity. Yes, but you're a pampered pooch now.
I did.
Yeah, there's a lot
Going
of
along.
really weird animes in the isekai category, or even light novels that are like that. So I would recommend, like, if you find one that's weird, don't be like weirded out by it. Give it a chance. It's probably like semi-decent.
I will say, going along that line of thought, one of the more mainstream ones out there is, didn't I say to make my abilities average in the next
weird.
life?
That's just good.
Well, it's good, but it's along the lines of I want to be a pampered dog or all that other stuff, and they end up being, something else. Where with I want to make my abilities average, as we said in our one poorly explained game, God took the median instead of the mean. It's one of those. Okay, if the top character is Infinite God Dragon and the bottom character is 1/1 Ant.
Sure.
In the middle, which is like about a demonish lord level, that's what will make your abilities. And it's one of those, what? That's not average. And it's like, well, in my opinion, that's average. So there you have it.
And
One of the
I
ones
just,
that I recently enjoyed was
animes. They like
I just
the
want
recent
to-
ones. It's sort of the monkey's paw. You ask for one thing and you technically get it.
No, are you
Yeah.
saying?
I was saying one of the animes or one of the light novels of Isekai that I recently started to enjoy was Ideal Sponge Your Life. It's basically this guy gets summoned just to make babies.
I'm sorry, what
And
now?
then he gets to
I'm
just
sorry,
do
wait, what?
whatever he wants.
Please explain this plot about baby making man.
Is this a mainstream or is this?
Noah, why do I feel like this is in the 18 plus category of anime / light novels?
I'll allow it. Continue.
So basically, he gets summoned by the other world because they found that he has like bloodline magic in his veins,
Of course.
and they had a war in the kingdom that basically killed everyone with the bloodline magic except for the queen. And she's like, "Yeah, we summoned you just to help me make babies and to continue our line. So you can do whatever you want. Agree to. We'll even send you back to Japan for like a week to get whatever conveniences you want to bring back with us." So he basically just spends all of his money, says goodbye to his family, and hops over there for
You're saying
green,
she could
green
just
card right there.
saying she can just keep the bloodline going with other people? I mean, bloodlines don't exactly work where you need two of the same, unless.
So for the to keep it so that the child will be more realistically to be able to keep the magic, they want to have the chances of it's to keep the chances high that the baby will have that magic bloodline.
Okay. And actually, something in there that a lot of isekais don't touch on, and it's what happens to the person's family and stuff when they leave for
Right.
this isekai world. A lot of people do it with the getting hit, but there are also some animes where it's like, we're just going to completely ignore the fact that unless the person was killed, they normally ignore the fact that they were transported into this alternate world. Like one of the I'm sure, have you guys seen ReZero season 2 yet?
Yeah,
Started watching it.
Okay, so
I didn't like season 1.
Podcast viewers, addressing you directly. We're about to start talking about ReZero season 2.
No, we're not. I
be
haven't
spoiled.
finished watching all of it.
Hold on.
No.
No,
No.
you've seen this episode. We watched it together.
Okay.
Brief spoilers for something that happens. Okay, we'll give you
Okay.
2 seconds to click away. Okay, you should have clicked away at this point. So basically, Natsuki Subaru gets to meet his parents through
Oh
one
yeah,
of
that's
the
right.
trials that he has to undergo. He gets to meet the parents he left behind in the other world. And that was sort of like the first time for me where they actually addressed a character who got isekai'd with the world he left behind. With like essentially you learned about what he was like in that other world, the need, and how he had two very loving parents who understood him. And then this was just something I read in an interview with the author where it's one of those, it was like, Natsuki has two really loving parents. What happened to them when they found out he mysteriously vanished? It was like, his parents are extremely depressed because their son vanished without a trace. And they are still looking for him to this day.
I will
Yeah,
say, like,
and-
some of the other series sort of do it. Like, that time I got reincarnated as a slime, they do flashback to his funeral. They do flashback to his friend throwing his computer into the bathtub to wipe its hard drive.
If I die, wipe my computer.
Hard drive, exactly. They do resolve that issue. I will also say in How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom, they address it in the prologue, and this isn't a spoiler because this is within the first like chapter or so, the first book. They address in the prologue that his grandfather is with him, and that in the first chapter, his grandfather dies shortly after his grandmother had died, and he's no longer he has no family left when he's isekai'd into this world. And his grandfather tells him, build a family for yourself. So
there is also a couple of isekais where they do a portal to a different world, but that portal stays open. So if you have Gate, that's the JSDF fought there.
Yep.
They have him going back to the normal world where they like see his ex-wife and how she's like basically got no money because he was still taking care of her after they got divorced.
This opens up a really interesting discussion on if there's an isekai and you are somehow transported into another world, does there have to be a road of no return for it to be considered an isekai? If we're saying SAO is technically an isekai, which means like they can get back into the real world if they beat the game or whatever. Inuyasha is considered by some to be an isekai because she's technically traveling into an alternate timeline of the past. You could consider Digimon and Spirited Away and Infinite Dendrogram to be somewhere along the same line.
Season 3.
Yeah.
Sonic X.
Sonic X is actually listed in Wikipedia as an isekai. I'm dead serious.
Huzzah.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting discussion to have just had right there.
I will say, I don't think an isekai has to have a vote of no way of return. I think it opens up different plot points where it's one of those for the characters. So let me break it down. You've kind of got like three things when it comes to an isekai, when it comes to that. You've got, yes, I know I can definitely return. So something like Gate. No, I don't know whether or not I'll be able to return. Something like Rising of the Shield Hero. But Sam, in the light novels, tells what's going on with that. But in the anime, it's up in the air. And then you have something like I got reincarnated as a slime, or in another world with my cell phone where it's like, no, this person is dead. There is no way for them to come back. And it kind of, brings up different points on how a main character acts when it comes to that stuff.
Well, there's also I mean, I don't know if you guys would consider this an isekai, but what happens after the guy gets back to this world? So instead of a rogue hero, he was summoned to another world. He defeated the demon lord, and then he came back to this world, and he's living in this world with the changed rules and everything. Would we consider that an isekai?
By that definition, wouldn't Bleach count as an isekai?
Not technically, because it still takes.
Well, no, hold on, hear that out real quick.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay, so he basically has to go into another world where he can't escape until he's completed his main plot line, and he's basically going there just to rescue someone. He gets to return, but then he has to go to another world, basically similar to the previous one, also in the spirit of a dead, just to rescue someone. And one of the characters from the other worlds comes back and makes a whole altercation of the world he is currently a part of, and his job is to stop that from happening, going through. So that count as an isekai.
I think an isekai, and I don't know if you guys would agree with me on this. I think an isekai is, the point of the story is, in the beginning, it's established that a parallel, most of the time a fantasy world, comes to existence, and this particular individual is summoned there, or these group of individuals is summoned there, or someone from there comes here, and then it's predicated on mainly staying in that world. So to give you an example, I think, Noah, you'll agree with me on this. While in Gate, they can and do come back to our world, the majority of the story takes place in the fantasy world. I think in the anime, it's only like about 4 episodes total that are actually in this world. And the fact is, in that case, it would technically be considered a reverse isekai, because when they're back in our world, the characters from the fantasy world are with them, and they're in this world when they're doing it. So while I get kind of what you're going with for the multiple parallel worlds with Bleach, I don't necessarily think it's an isekai in the traditional aspect. I do agree that that's a good
definitely not traditional.
Yeah, I do agree that it's a good argument that he's hopping between parallel worlds and whatnot, but is it an isekai? I would say no.
I would say, going off of that, I would agree that an isekai should primarily be focused on the alternate or the alternative world, universe, whatever that the character finds themselves in, instead of real world hijinks, which takes up a significant portion of Bleach.
Only in the beginning, really, and I believe parts of like the third one, because there's the huge chunks with the whole Hollow section and the whole Soul Society. And then I believe in the, I didn't actually see it, but I heard something about the whole big war at the end of the series where they spend, so that's like a major part, like 60 to 70% of the series where they spend their time in another world.
Right, but
the main focus is that.
Because Bleach wait, real quick. And with the way of Bleach, I would say it's technically an isekai. You can make a solid argument that it's an isekai. It may not fit with most people's definition, but you have the Soul Society arc where the whole point of the arc is they're in another world saving their friend. And it's also one of those, Ichigo did not go willingly get this thing so he can go to the worlds. It was forced upon him to have this power to go between the worlds. Then you have the Hollow World arc, where it's one of those, this time it's his choice to go there, but he's still traveling to another world, and almost the entire thing is spent in that other world.
I would say those are 2 isekai arcs within the greater Bleach franchise. Because Bleach itself is not an isekai. There can be portions of it that have isekai elements, but I would not consider Bleach on the whole as its own IP, intellectual property, to be an isekai.
Because along that same argument that you make, Sam, technically the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya could be considered an isekai. Because how many times do they go to different alternate timelines or different dimensions and whatnot?
I would classify that. Well, it's not, but that's not the main plot of the story. The main plot of the story revolves around power, not that other worlds exist.
That's the whole plot of the one story of the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. He's in an alternate timeline, and by your guys' logic, with Bleach and whatnot, technically it could be considered an isekai.
Yes,
but as I agree with T-Leif on this, the entirety of the series is not predicated on the fact that the main character is in an alternate world, and that's where the majority of the story takes place. I agree with T-Leif that as an intellectual property, Bleach is not technically considered an isekai. While it has isekai elements in it, it is not part of the genre proper.
Fine. Well, drop
the
the
other
argument for
issue.
now.
The other
It was a
issue
compelling
is
argument,
our-
Edwin. I do agree that it could be made as a compelling argument. I don't think you're going to change my mind, but you could change minds of other people.
I haven't seen all of
the
Bleach,
problem of
so
the
I
other-
can't give you the full argument with the whole last arc.
Oh, dude, you
Wouldn't be able to do that.
You should definitely read the last arc of Bleach. It's actually pretty good.
It was so bad after Aizen got his butt kicked.
No,
the
dude,
other
it's
big issue.
because the anime had too much filler, man.
I mean, it definitely did, but I just felt like after. We're getting off track though, but
Yeah,
I just felt like after Aizen
T-Leif,
died,
go ahead.
there was no
You want to
story.
say something?
The other big issue with Bleach is the fact that most isekais focus on a singular alternate world, rather than in Bleach's case we have the whatever Soul Society and the Hollow Arc, which are two distinctly separate alternate worlds. So isekai, I think, mostly has to be predicated on the story being taking place in this alternate world, and there also can't be multiple of them. Otherwise, it's just a story about a guy that just randomly dimension hops. It becomes more Doctor Who in that sense, rather than an isekai focusing on one particular world.
Yeah, because I think in isekai, the big thing about that is, and I think everyone will agree with me on this, when it comes to isekai, it's about the story of the alternate world building is primarily what the focus of that story is, and the fact that the main character just happens to inhabit that alternate world.
Right, with whatever restrictions or abilities or what have you.
That would still be Bleach though, because there wasn't really any kind of development in the main world for the most part.
Okay, so then so it's one of those building off that. We've gone with the Isekais, we've gone what makes an Isekai, we've gone there. This is something that we didn't say. We were kind of getting into the thing at the beginning, and this is just my personal interest on you guys. What's your favorite Isekai and why?
Ooh.
Come on.
That's not a possible
we're gonna
question
we're gonna have to
answer.
break this up into written and anime at the moment.
Okay, fine. Light novel, fine. We'll go with light novel / manga isekai, and then like anime isekai. How about that? Well, here we'll make it simple. I'll go first. All right. Give you guys some time to think. Probably favorite anime is me. I've said it before. It's probably one of my favorite anime of all time. Is 100% Overlord. As T-Leif was saying earlier, we have a likable main character who is 100% in over his head, with the fact that he's now inhabiting the body of essentially, well, the evil now Demon King. Essentially is inhabiting the body of the Demon King, but it's one of those, unlike most animes where you have an overpowered main character, I really liked with how this one was, they showed him actually role-playing into the character and actually being like, okay, he knows he's in over his head. He's straight up preparing for sessions, where there was one scene that I just loved, where it was just him sitting down and he was like, silence! No, not like that. That doesn't work. Silence! No, I need to be more kingly than that. To a point where it was he fully recognizes that he is not a Demon King and that this is awkward for him, but he has to put on a show for his subordinates. Because at the end of the day, he is not the Demon King. He is not that. And then I remember when he actually does the thing where he stands up and goes, silence! And then he leaves the room, and everyone in the room is like, wow, he was so amazing when he was like, silence!
I remember that episode.
Oh, I love that thing. From anime.
I would have to say, anime wise, for me, it's a tie between Konosuba and the Rising of the Shield Hero. I think Konosuba takes it the genre and turns it upside down on its head. And the way I'd like to describe it, and we use this in our game show, is world's worst WoW party. And it's just the hilarity of the situations that they get in. It just turns the entire adventuring trope on its head with comedy galore on it. I love Rising of the Shield Hero because It's a small party arc. I can relate to the main character and whatnot. For the light novels, and I know it's going to be turned into an anime. I hope they do it well. Sam turned me on to this. It's how a realist hero rebuilt a kingdom. And the main reason why I like that, yep, that's it. So the main reason I like that is it appeals to my history side, because in there he's talking about Machiavelli's The Prince, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. It's talking about the history of the three kingdoms, the Russia-Japan War, a whole bunch of stuff in there. He even makes an alliterative metaphor to the Cold War as well when it comes to implementing some of the policies and whatnot that he's doing. So it's really good on that, and it's very grounded in what can be done. I would say starting to get toward the 6th, 7th, it's starting to lose a little bit of track and everything, but definitely the first 4 volumes, solid story on it, and it's a definite recommend for me. Edwin, how about you?
So before we begin, I have to ask: is the whole isekai genres, as far as I've seen, they tend to have like a really generic art style. Is that because they hire like one artist to do all the light novel covers, and then they just base the anime off of that, or what?
I've noticed personally that a lot of the art styles and stylistic choices that come from depictions in either the light novels or the manga tend to be carried over to the anime itself, usually because the art director is either directly on the team and in charge of it, or because they were heavily consulted in the process of animating and drawing the anime itself. Because if you're creating a franchise, and especially in terms of anime and having that intellectual property, you want to make it seem unified. You don't want to have one art style for the light novel, a different one for the manga, and then a third one in the anime. It doesn't make sense, and it makes it seem disconnected.
Speaking of that,
definitely.
Hold on real quick. You dodged the question, Edwin. It was a good distraction to get yourself from admitting what it is. But I saw the clever dodge you tried to pull there.
You say your favorite is SAO.
Assuming we're not talking about Western properties, and I'm not discussing. It's definitely Konosuba.
Konosuba.
Okay, but then that would lead into the question: does Futurama count as an isekai?
Technically, yes.
That would be dodging the question.
Futurama's an isekai.
Technically,
I would say it's a Western isekai.
I would say time travel is not isekai. Time travel is its own category.
I'm about to say there's Inuyasha. Because Inuyasha.
In Inuyasha, they're time traveling to an alternate past where spirits and magic and all of that stuff exist. It's an alternate timeline of the past with magic.
I'll accept that.
Time travel is its own.
I thought it was the actual timeline, and they were just explaining that it was very magical back then. But
we'll drop this for the moment. I'm of the opinion that you could say Futurama is an isekai.
Noah, how about you? Hold on, we still got 2 more. Noah and T-Leif need to give their favorites.
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite. I love all isekais.
Oh, boo!
Unacceptable.
All right. If we say isekai, what's the first series that pops into your head?
You
know it, even if you're
you are dead to me.
Just say it.
It's okay. We're here for you.
No judging.
Got nothing.
Oh, boo!
Yeah.
I call bullshit.
Yeah. You've let us down. Fine. Give him a moment. T-Leif, you've been very vocal with the isekai things tonight. Which one do you think embodies it the best?
So for this, we're going to take a trip back in the past to when I first started watching anime, which was around the time when Yu Yu Hakusho and Naruto first started airing way back in the mid to late 1990s.
Wow, way to make me feel old.
Yu Yu Hakusho is probably one of my favorites for nostalgia reasons, just because that's the thing that got me into anime to begin with. But more recently, the two animes that I have to say that I personally love the most would be Overlord, and That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime. I already talked about Overlord with Sam for a little bit, so That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime is really interesting to me because they do the whole death and reincarnation thing in a very interesting way, like I mentioned before. But additionally, the character, like Joey mentioned, is a lot more mature. They have a lot more options. They know what they're doing, and they're not some 14-year-old kid trying to figure out what the heck is going on. They actually like know things and can be an adult about things and figure things out like that. So personally, those are probably my top two. But if I had to say for nostalgia reasons, I would definitely go with Yu Yu Hakusho, which is an amazing show if you get the chance to watch it.
I just want to add a side note too. Slime. Slime does do one thing that I think a lot of isekais fall into the pitfall of, and while there is a little bit of it there, there's not a lot. Slime avoids the harem pitfall that sometimes comes with isekai.
Oh god,
we never talked about. Why does every isekai have
I don't
to
know
have
how
a
we didn't talk
harem?
about that.
Well, okay, backing up. And so the reason why I'll get into why isekais will have to have harem in a second here, because Realist Hero brought this up in an acceptable way. But backing up for a second to That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime.
Pause,
There's maybe
wait,
a
I'm not
little
gonna
bit
let you
of
back up.
there's a little bit of harem. I'll get to that in a second. Slime has a little bit of harem in it because it's the fighting between the Cyclopses and the one friend, but it avoids that pitfall entirely pretty much because, for the most part, it's a non-human main character. Now, getting to the reason why a harem is technically necessary in some cases,
it's an escapist.
I'm going to go back to what was said in Another World with my cell phone and also in Realist Hero. In history, polygamy has been legal, okay? And the reason why in Realist Hero that point is pointed out, and he's like, no, I don't want to do this, and then it's pointed out, it's like, no, with noble houses, this is actually okay to either have multiple wives or multiple husbands, because in medieval times, it was not guaranteed that the mother was going to live through childbirth or that the father would live to actually get with that stuff. So in that kind of sense of harem, it's one of those, it's a necessary plot device. In the sense of some of the other stuff where it's like SAO turns into harem, it's kind of like one of those, that's fan pandering.
I'm about to say, that whole thing is an excuse just to have the harem.
You are confusing historical realism with the company's need to sell anime by the use of fan service.
Yes, for the most part it is fan service, but there is one or two isekais out there that do have it listed. Like I said, Realist Hero, it's in there for that purpose.
I hate to agree with him on that one. That one at least does it well, where he's extremely reluctant to do it and does not want to do it. And it's one of those, he's worn down into accepting it, but it's one of those, as he says, but person A is first wife, first queen, is the person who gets the love and devotion. The other ones are mainly political.
And I would say that's probably why the other isekais try to do that, and that might be their original reasoning, but then it just turns into fan service.
Yeah. I see. What time period was this? Because a lot of European kingdoms were still under the whole Christian church, one man and one woman, to the point where it's even a big thing where one of the kings, split off from that just so he could divorce his wife and have multiple other women.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill this line of thought for a second and go, Noah, you've had enough time to think about this. What's your favorite isekai series? All
right.
So for anime, on every other aspect of the harem thing.
For anime, it is thus the JSDF fought there. I really like the whole mix of fantasy and military that they did.
I like that.
For the reading, there's a tie between two right now, and that's Arifureta from Commonplace to World's Strongest.
How did we not talk about that one?
because I was saving it for now. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know about it.
It's a tie between that and Mandaji Tachina Desuga.
English
Give them the
name.
What is he?
English
Trying
name.
to,
I'm about to say, I'm just nodding like I know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, I know that.
before he says that,
Oh, I got it.
informed with this.
Problem
Arifuda
children are
is-
coming from another world, aren't they?
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
What is it?
We saw it, Sam. Problem children are coming from another world.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the anime of that. I forgot that existed, actually.
It's
I'm just writing this down to watch
personally
later.
for me, it's a
Oh
rather
wait, is this a book though?
personally for me, it's a rather mediocre anime. It doesn't really stand out
Yeah,
in
I
terms
agree.
of
It's kinda
creativity or anything. But
Wait, which
it
one are we
is
talking about? The Problem Children
average
or
depiction.
Arifuda?
Problem
We need
Children.
to clarify that.
Oh, that's for
it's rather
I said
mediocre, but
for
it's
the.
like it's kind of like the average Isekai, I would say. Doesn't really
Well, I said
stand out,
for
but
the light
like-
novels. So
Yeah, for
doesn't really stand
Are we
out.
talking about the median or the mean average?
But actually,
It
since
doesn't
we can
really-
finally talk about Arifuda, because I had forgotten about that one. Back to like the sort of,
Mhm.
I liked that one because it was the concept of multiple people getting sent to the another world that I brought up earlier. It was slipping my mind of what it was when I only said Overlord and Lock Horizon. But Arifuda, I heard from that the light novels were a lot better than the anime.
yep, definitely.
But for those
That's
who don't
the
know
trend I've been
Arifuda,
picking.
for those who don't know Arifuda, and I'll help Edwin out because he doesn't know it, is
Mm.
it's an anime where an entire class gets
High school
transported
class.
to another world, and they're all given jobs. And the main
I think
character
I've
has
heard
a
about
job
this.
no, help me out here. What was the main character's job?
The main character was a support class. He was
It was like synergist or something.
he
Yeah.
dealt with rocks.
It was like something really common.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then he like
he
gets
had like the
betrayed,
most normal
falls
stats
down into
about.
the deepest pits of the dungeon, and story goes from there. Which is actually brings me to something I want to bring up is the concept of overpowered characters in isekais. Like those
oh
seem to
my
be
god.
right thing. At least in Arifuda, he earns it. Like it's one of those. It feels earned. He goes through an essential literal hellscape to earn his overpowered thing. So it's one of those. He paid his dues. He was a weakling, and you saw him struggle.
A lot of it
just dies
is
over and over again.
I mean, it's
a lot of the overpowered characters is because it is a basic escapist fantasy. That's why they have harems. I'm just saying. It's the escapist fantasy. That's why they don't mention the people they left behind.
Yeah.
They don't want you to think about that.
Honestly, building on what Edwin said, most of these isekais are just Gary Stu or Mary Sue, like essential fanfics of the real world, where they just pretty much want to do whatever they want. However, there are some isekai animes out there that have main characters that don't have specifically overpowered like abilities. You can consider animes like ReZero, Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash, Knights and Magic.
Konosuba is one.
Konosuba, Dendrogram. So if you look for it, there are isekais where the main character ends up not having OP abilities, but still having like some kind of special ability or trait or characteristic.
So
I will say there are a couple there's one or two animes that do OP correctly as well. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. Technically, his ability is OP. However, the way that they go about it is, like Sam said, he still has to go and earn the stuff and acquire the abilities in order to do it. And he does a lot of that on the front end.
And I can say this, at least with the light novel perspective, because I've read up to not the most recent English release of the light novel. He does get more powerful, but at the same time, it's clear, and it's made very clear, that he is by in no means the strongest in that realm. It's well as there are those who are definitely stronger than he is. And I still remember in the anime where it's well as when he's first facing off with Milim. It's one of those his first thoughts when he's fighting her is like, yep, she's a lot stronger than me. I can't win this through brute force.
Right.
That's always good.
I mean, another example of that, like we've been harping on it like a bunch already, but that's because it's a fucking amazing anime and you should all go watch it, is Overlord.
Yeah.
Where he's clearly OP, but the focus of the anime isn't on his powers or ability, it's on the world building and his schemes to kind of take over the world.
Accidental scheme to take over the world.
Well, and also the thing,
scheme to take over the world.
and also the thing with that is, it's one of those when he's trying to take over the world. Yes, he could do it flat out with his power. However, as stated in Machiavelli's The Prince, kingdoms overtaken easily will be difficult to maintain. Kingdoms taken over with difficulty will be easy to maintain. So yes, he could literally just wipe out the world and rule it that way, but he would never have a full, firm grasp on the power of it, which is why in Overlord, he does do the slow play. He uses his OP abilities to, when he needs to, cheat the process as he sees fit. Is kind of the way that I would describe it.
It's like the difference between the Romans and the Mongols. It's like the difference between the Romans and the Mongols, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To an extent.
Another overpower. It's one of those, we've had the thing with like how the overpower kind of works is, as you said, kind of have lofty goals with Overlord, or the people are clearly stronger. One that I liked was how Skeleton Knight in Another World did it. This one was a light novel. It's not an anime yet. But the way they had their overpowered character is he came in, he came in with the stats of a character he had once used in a video game, an undead thing, and yes, he came in at max level and everything, but his sword technique is not there. Like, it's one of those, I remember when he goes one-on-one with a person who is a master of the sword, and he's outclassed. Because, as they said, yeah, if he hits them, they're dead in one hit, but he can never hit them because his technique is unpolished and unrefined, that he's outclassed in a one-on-one fight with someone who's a master of their technique.
I would say another one that's similar along those lines is Demon Lord Retry. Yeah, he's an OP character and he comes in as OP character because he has knowledge on this stuff, but the problem is he can't access all of that because the world has put limits on the amount of experience and he's limited on what he can do. But he is OP in a lot of the stuff because he does, overnight, here's a city that I built. But he had to work a lot in order to get that, basically.
This is just me. Demon Lord Retry to me, for me, it was kind of a meh thing, but the character, I felt like, this might just be me. I don't like it when the world is putting limits on the character. It's one of those, I personally just like it where it's one of those, like, maybe they aren't as powerful as they think instead. Like, as you said, he's not able to access all of his stuff right away.
So you don't like tangible limits. You don't like tangible limits.
Because you know he will be able to access all of it, and then he'll just be at full power. But it's one of those. This was just my thing with Demon Lord Retry. He never really ran into any issues at all. Like, there was no real threat at all to that thing. Because that's just me. I was kind of on that anime because he never really had a real threat.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of isekais that are just or average. I would say Demon Lord Retry falls into that category because it's very rare for one to come up with a shockingly new concept for how to get the character to a new world, or to have creative enough world building that it will actually stand out. Because most fantasy worlds are kind of just copy. Most fantasy worlds are literally just copy paste Lord of the Rings, and that's not interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. I kind of found it a bit lame how obsessed they are with that. It's very strange. Like, they're not even that obsessed with their own kind of history, but with the fantasy realm of Europe. That's very odd to me, but I guess it's very game-like, so it's translated well over there.
With we'll end on that then with our podcast. So overall review.
How
How about this, Sam? How about we do kind of like a parting thought on everyone goes around the table and just kind of does a parting
this
thought.
This is our first time. Screw it. Go for it. But
all right. So
parting thoughts, final words.
Parting thought for me, at least. Personally, I love the isekai genre. I think it's one of my favorites. You've got good and bad ones out there, as we've kind of discussed. There's multiple ways to approach it. I've gotten more into the light novels recently, but when it comes to my favorite type of anime series, I would say isekai genre is definitely up there at the top, for better or for worse. I'll pitch it over to Noah for your final thoughts.
So,
I guess you can say Isekai anime is one of my favorites as well. There's just so many different worlds out there that people can imagine, and always enjoy getting into new ones.
T-Leif?
So yes, Isekai is one of my favorite genres, but I wanted to leave everyone with a bit of food for thought. A lot of what we talked about today is strictly based in like Japanese media, like anime, light novels, and manga. But I wanted everyone to kind of consider some Western examples of isekai, which we touched upon earlier with Futurama. But if you actually think about it, franchises such as Winnie the Pooh, Ron, Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, Jumanji, even like the Narnia series by C.S. Lewis, these could all be considered examples of isekai in Western media or literature. So it's really important to keep an open mind when we're talking about genres and topics, especially in relation to anime and media, because these are not new ideas. So, like, how does the old saying go? There's nothing new under the sun. Like, these are all
they're just repolished old ideas,
right? That are coming from somewhere, and this idea of getting trapped in an alternate world isn't unique to the Japanese media world of anime and manga. Like, you have the Narnia series, where they literally walk through a wardrobe and end up in this magical land of Narnia. Like, that is technically an isekai.
Edwin, your final thoughts?
So, as a guy not super familiar with it, from what I have seen of certain things like Konosuba, it is really interesting. And even though there is a lot of extreme wish fulfillment, which I think could very severely limit a lot of them in terms of enjoyment, there do seem to be enough that the whole genre does offer a really interesting bounty. And like, I'm really interested into actually seeing Overlord right now. And what was that you were mentioning, Sam? The one with the guy with the really overpowered character, but with the weak sword skills? That one actually sounded really good.
Another World. That's a light novel.
Was it Skeleton Knight? Okay. Yeah, that one sounded really interesting.
And Sam, close us out.
Okay. Well, you did. Oh, yeah, you did.
I did.
So for me, the isekai genre is there's a lot you have to go through, and there's a lot that I would say are subpar, don't always hit the mark. But when you do find the one that's good, I typically find that the best isekai I enjoy is when the main character, you see no other option than that they had to be an isekai character. Like, it's one of those, this couldn't have been someone who was born in this world, they had to be an isekai character. And for me, those are the isekai animes that always like hit me the most, where it's one of those, this person had to be an isekai. They couldn't have just been like a random citizen born there. So that's how, as I always say, you can figure out whether an isekai is going to be good or not, is that this person had to be a from another world to kind of have it work.
Proper justification.
On that note, I'll let Sam make the final word, but I'd like to close out by thanking Edwin, Noah, and T-Leif for joining Generic Anime Group podcast talking about this discussion.
The Generic Anime podcast, don't say the initials because we might get sued for copyright.
You need a theme song or a theme jingle.
But thank you guys for joining us. Sam, I'll let you do a full closeout on this here.
My full closeout is just thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
See you guys.
Thanks,